So that's my project set up and my file saved out. So the very first thing I need to do then is bring in the reference that we were discussing earlier. So I'm going to open up my outliner on the left hand side here, and I have my channel box over here on the right hand side. There's a few different ways you can do everything in Maya. I could create the image planes in the viewport as geometry and I could texture those. But in this case, I'm going to use a specific tool that Maya has for loading in images. You'll find it under the Create menu and Free Image Plane. Now that's going to create an image plane within my scene. And to that image plane, I can attach my reference imagery. So I'm going to go to the attribute editor, and I can do that by pressing this button over here, or I could hit Command or Control and A. I'm on a Mac, but the hotkeys are very similar on a PC. Because I'm going to use hotkeys quite a bit in this lesson, I'm going to use a hotkey generator for my screen. And you'll see the hotkey generator pop up every so often in the bottom left hand corner of the screen here as I press various hotkeys such as Control A just here. Let's bring in our image planes. So under the Create menu, I'll go to Free Image Plane, and that's going to create an image plane within my viewport. In my attribute editor, it's going to bring up the attributes for that image plane. And I just need to be a little careful to think about the direction of each of my image planes. If I hit W to bring up my Move Tool gizmo, I can see that the plane is pointing down the Z axis, which is this one just here. If I want to make my gizmo bigger or smaller, I can use the plus or minus keys. So the image plane is facing down the Z. So let's take a look and see in the orthogonal views which direction that is. So it's this one here. It's the front Z is where this particular plane by default is pointing. So let's load our front image into this image plane. And we do need to be aware to name things correctly, because we want to have the front image plane for the front of the fork and the side for the side of the fork, or else it will get rather confusing. And we can go and look for our image now, and we can see that it automatically opens up in Fork Modeling Source Images. Now there's nothing in here at the moment, and this is really where I should be saving my reference. And there were the original JPEGs and RAW files for the fork. And in here I saved out my color corrected reference. So there's my front view and there's my side view. Okay, so there are the two images I need to load in. Now I don't want to load them in from here. I want to copy them, and I want to go to my project hierarchy, which is Fork Modeling, and into Source Images, which is just here. I want to save the images in there. So I want to bring in my dependencies, in this case my two pieces of reference, and keep them inside in my Maya project hierarchy. Now if you're new to 3D or new to more technical CG software, this might seem like a little bit of a pain to set up right at the start instead of just working in a file. But just trust me, this is something that you really do want to do, particularly as your projects will get more complicated. So now that those images are there, I can see them within this window over here, and I'm looking for fork front, and it gives me a preview of the image here. So I'm going to click open there, and it's going to load that image in for me. Now the advantage of using the image plane tool within Maya is that it will work out the aspect ratio for me from the size of the image. So the image is looking good and it's loaded in. Now let's go and load in the side view. So I'm going to go create, and I'm going to go to Free Image Plane. That's going to create another image plane for me. Now I want this one to appear in the side view over here. So I need to take that image plane and I need to rotate it 90 degrees. So I'm going to hit E on the keyboard for my rotate tool. And I could go and type in the values. I could type in 90 here, but it's easier to do it in the viewport. So if I hit J on the keyboard, it will be locked to step snapping. And in this case, it's moving through 45 degrees. You can see it in rotate Y of the attribute editor. So I can very quickly snap it around to be 90 degrees, which is what I was looking for. And we can see that down here. And now that it's in the right direction, I'm going to go back to the image plane shape node here. And I'm going to look for image name and click on this button here to bring in my side view. Okay, and it'll take a second, and now it is loaded in the side view. We can see if I full screen this, we can see that my front image is looking okay, but my side view image is in fact the wrong way around. So I'm going to bring up my attribute editor, just clicked on it again there, and instead of setting it to 90, I'm going to set it to -90, and that's going to flip it the other way around for me. Okay, so that is both of the image planes brought in. Now we can see that they're not exactly in the right place. So you can see that it's a little bit higher here than it is here. And that's probably because I moved my arms while I was shooting the reference imagery. And really that's as a result of not using a tripod. But that's okay. Ultimately, we have to make do with the reference that we've got. And even with the very best shot reference, there's always a translation process from 2D images into 3D models. So there's always a little bit of guessing. So we're going to have to move this up and down a little bit to get it to line up. So I'm going to jump back out of that view. So we could definitely do this by eye in this case, but a little hint here for when you're trying to line things up, because sometimes it's a bit more complicated than this, is if we jump into the side view and let's create a plane, and I'm going to scale that plane up just here like this, and I can use this to help me get my line up. So I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to put it right up the top here, and I can zoom in a little bit there if I need to, and I could line it up just here. I'm going to say that's the top of the fork. So I can hit Command and D then to duplicate that plane. And I'm not going to keep these, they're not vitally important in any way, but it will help me to just make sure I've got my lineup working okay. I'm going to hit F there to zoom in, and I could line this up for the bottom of my fork, and maybe let's just do one more and we'll line it up for the top of the handle just here. Okay, so I've got these three planes. They're kind of marking off the main areas of my fork in the front view. So if I jumped out of my front view now and I was to jump over into my side view by hitting space bar just there, I can see that yes indeed the reference is off by just a small amount. So I'm going to select this image plane, and just as I select it, I should rename this just to be neat and tidy. So it says side image plane here. And you can see that as I select the side image plane, these little lineup pieces of geometry that I created have disappeared. So what I can do just to keep those visible, because we're looking at them from side on, I'm going to take those three planes and I'm going to put them into a display layer. Now a display layer is much like Photoshop's layering system, and I can get to the display layer options under the channel box. So here's my channel box here, and here's my display layers, and this little button over here on the right is going to allow me to add selected objects to a new display layer. If I wanted to, I could turn on and off the visibility of those lineup planes, but that's not what I want to do. In fact, what I want to do is highlight the visibility of those planes. So I've got these lineup planes on a display layer here, and by default I can select them, but if I set it over to template, they go into wireframe and I can't select them, and that can be quite useful. So I have an idea where they are, but they're not getting in my way and I can't select them. If I change it from template over to reference, they're now smooth shaded, but I still can't select them, and that's quite useful to be able to do too. In this case, I want to set them over to template, so I'm going to just click through again. So if I leave them in template mode, I can see them in the side view now. They've been highlighted, but I can't select them, and that's exactly what I want in this case. So now I can select my image plane and I can just move it down, and it's never going to be perfect, but now the top is lined up a little bit better and the bottom are lined up a little bit better, and this handle is slightly out, and again I changed angle when shooting the reference, but that is close enough. Now these lineup planes, I don't need them anymore, so I could delete them, and in this case I think what I'll do is I'll just group them together by hitting Command and G, and I'll just hide the display layer. I'm going to take one last look at my reference in the front view, and that does look closer. It does look lined up a little bit better. So last few things to do then with these image planes. It is possible to leave the image planes in the center of the world. So in this kind of cross pattern like this. But in what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them back out of the way, and that's so I can see the model a little bit clearer. And some people are happy to model with the cross, but I'm going to push them back. I'm actually going to hide them out of this view anyway. So I'm going to jump out of perspective by just hitting the spacebar. And over in this view, just over here, I'll make sure to select the front one and go to my attribute editor. And I'm going to change it from show in all views to display true camera. And you can see that it has disappeared now from my perspective view, but I can see it from my front view. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the side view. I'm going to set it up to look through this side camera. I'll move it from front over to side. And there we go. So now I'll be able to see it see the fork from the front in my orthogonal view and from the side here. And I'll be able to see the model itself in the perspective view, and it will be all nice and clear for me. So that's how I'm going to set up my image planes for the modeling process. So in this lesson, we've loaded in some image planes. We've loaded in our reference imagery. We've lined them up correctly, and we've set up our viewports so that we can start the modeling process. In the next lesson, then we'll start actually modeling out the fork.